This video is brought to you by Practical Music Theory for the Rock Guitarist, my new book, which is a comprehensive guide to all aspects of music theory necessary for playing rock guitar. From blues to the cycle of fifths, from understanding and using modes to choosing the right notes for a melodic solo, from pentatonic scales to chord construction and keys. It's all covered in a clear and concise manner. With accompanying video demonstrations, jam tracks and tabs, you'll learn to use the knowledge you gain in accessible ways that make sense for less than the cost of a few guitar lessons. Check out the link in the description for more details. Hello chaps, welcome once again to John Robson Guitar Tuition. As always, I do hope you're well. Let's talk about strings. Given the fact that this channel has been sort of in its current format now for over 4 years, I mean, I started back in 2008, but I was posting maybe once or twice perhaps a year back then. I didn't really start kind of taking YouTube seriously or doing it in earnest until 10 years after that, 2018. And I didn't kind of settle on the current format for the channel of, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday videos, a Friday live stream and a Sunday video. That all sort of coalesced and sort of crystallized into its current state in 2020. So that's still 4 years that I've been doing the channel in its current form. And I don't think I've done any more than one video about strings, and given that strings are like the point of contact between us as we're playing and the guitar, I think they warrant probably a little bit more of a mention. This isn't going to be a video where I'm talking about, oh, these strings are fantastic and these strings aren't, and these strings give this kind of tone and those strings don't. It's just some reflections really on the journey I've been on regarding strings, brands, gauges and so on, how I've got to where I'm at, what I've discovered, what I like, what I don't like, and as I say, what I've ended up settling on. And if we go back to the dawn of time, or like the early 1980s, when I was starting to really start taking the guitar seriously, there seemed amongst the circles that I moved in to be something of an arms race to the bottom. Who could play with the lightest gauge strings? Nines. What are you playing on nines for? If you get some eights on your guitar, you can play really insane bends. Van Halen uses 8-gauge strings, and that something like that was always, kind of enough of an incentive, and then somebody would come along and say, what are you using 8-gauge strings for? You can get sevens and you can play some insane bends with those. So, kind of, I don't think that you can go any lower than sevens, can you? But not surprising with string gauges like that, and big fists of ham like these, string breakages were something of an issue. That said, I think the guitar might have had something to do with it back in the sort of early 80s, 82, 83, that sort of time. I was playing on a satellite Les Paul copy, much like the one you can see hanging on the wall back there, and I often describe that guitar as a collection of sharp edges held together with a guitar-shaped lump of plywood, which is a little bit unkind, but it wasn't the most an instrument made with the most finesse, shall we say, and sharp edges were aplenty. Couple that with 7-gauge strings, and the inevitable will happen, and usually did. So I started kind of graduating. I went back up to 8s again, and took my guitar into a local music shop, long since departed, Middlesbrough Music on Gilk Street in Middlesbrough, if anyone remembers that. Uncle Tony, remember him? But he said, I'll set your guitar up. He said, but you'll get a lot better tone out of it if you go up from 8s to 9s. Okay, do it. And does it increase the tone? Does it give you a better tone? Well, we're going to talk about that as we go through the video, if I remember. But certainly, kind of going up to 9-gauge strings, it improved or it reduced the number of string breakages I was getting, and then again took the guitar. I think it was a different guitar this time, to a local legend up in this part of the world, sadly no longer with us, Jim Cairns, who said, if this guitar was set up properly, which I'll do, you could probably get away with going up a gauge in strings to 10-gauge strings, and this will have been about 1990 or thereabouts. So, okay. And he fitted some nice jumbo frets on it as well, I seem to remember at the time. Got it back with the 10 gauge strings. It felt a little bit stiff for the first couple of days, but then I got used to it. And back then, it was like, everybody bought D'Addario strings because those were the ones that you had, because that was the received wisdom. Occasionally, though, you can't get your hands on D'Addario strings, or the music shop that you go to is out of stock of D'Addarios in your chosen gauge, which I said back then were 10s. So you'd buy another brand, and other brands that I've used over the years would be, I've got some notes here, Roto Sound, Ernie Ball, obviously, and more recently Legacy Strings, which are the in-house brand of a place called Strings Direct. And the thing I've noticed about D'Addario, Legacy, Rotor Sound and Ernie Ball strings is you don't have to readjust your guitar. You take a set of 10 gauge D'Addarios off your guitar and put a set of 10 gauge Ernie Ball strings on, and the intonation is where you left it. You don't have to mess with the truss rod. It feels the same, basically. There's only one brand of strings, and let me know if you've noticed this as well down in the comments. There's only one brand of strings where they just don't feel consistent. They don't feel the same. They don't feel like the gauge that they purport to be, and that's Fender strings. You put Fender strings on a guitar, and what were a set of 10s can often feel like 8s, or they could equally feel like a set of 11s. They just don't feel like the gauge that you've just taken off for some reason, even though they purport to be. And there's always, intonation work to have to do as well. I've never been able to put a set of Fender strings on a guitar of the gauge that I've just taken off and not have to adjust the intonation for some reason. So, I'd gone up to 10s by this point, and D'Addario were my main string choice, but I could happily use other gauges of strings as well, and just kind of interchangeable, basically. And I was getting away with 10s. I wasn't breaking strings anymore. That was another thing that I thought was, okay, I found my gauge now. 10 gauge strings. I rarely, if ever, break strings. I think in 2023, I don't think I broke a single string on any of the guitars in here, and they were all strung up with 10 gauge strings. So, right, that's obvious, isn't it? Proof positive that, it's the light gauge strings that snap. Of course, I'd edited out in my mind the fact that the guitar I'd been playing when I was using the ridiculously light strings, that satellite Les Paul, probably had more to do with the breakages I was getting. I also, in the 90s, briefly before I went to 10 gauge strings, I also got it into my head that the best kind of pick to use was a metal pick, and that might have had something to do with the breakages I was getting. But as I say, by and large, once I'd gone to 10 gauge strings, breakages were a thing of the past. But recently, as I've spoken about in a few videos, I had an injury to this hand, and 10 gauge strings just felt a little bit too tight and stiff for me, since basically my third finger on this hand here is basically it's an ornament rather than a functioning tool for playing the guitar with. So I'm using 3 fingers to do 4 fingers worth of work, and 10 gauge strings just started to feel a little bit too tight. I like a little bit of fight back in a guitar. I like the guitar to feel like it's saying, come on then, make an effort, but that was just, 10s after the injury were just starting to feel a little bit too demanding. So I went back down to 9 gauge strings, and here's the question I would say is you go and check my videos from, say, before I had the injury when I was still using 10 gauge strings, and since the beginning of this year, since I started playing again, I've been using 9s on everything. Have you noticed any difference in the tone that I'm getting from going from 10 gauge strings down to 9? I can't say that I have, and I honestly don't think that there is any difference, but, I'm just putting it out there, that if anyone has noticed a difference in the guitar sounds that I'm getting, could it be because of string gauges? I've got to tell you though, as I say, I'm not noticing any difference. The idea for this video started really when I had the work done on this guitar here, this Jet JT350, which, as you know, I've spoken about this many times. It's budget little kind of 300 quid Telecaster style thing. I really liked the neck on it when it arrived, and I thought there's a much better guitar in here, yearning to get out. So it went over to Agrajag Guitars, a local luthiery workshop in Middlesbrough, and I got them to put some jumbo stainless steel frets in it, and it's had some wiring stuff done as well, and new pickups and stuff. But James at Agrajag, he was asking me what gauge strings I wanted putting on after he'd done all the setup work, and I said, yeah, 9 gauge, I think. This is when I was on the cusp of admitting defeat and thinking I've got to go from 10s back down to 9s. So he recommended I can't remember the designation of them, but the relatively new product from D'Addario, those coated strings. Is it the D'Addario NYXL? I might be wrong on that, but it's the sort of D'Addario version of like the Elixir coated strings. And he really, really highly recommended them. I was a bit dubious at first because, as I say, I think I've done one video on strings on this channel in the past, and part of that video was I was using some Harley Benton coated strings, like the Harley Benton kind of cheapo version of Elixir strings, and I put them on the guitar, and immediately they felt sort of plasticky and not particularly nice, and almost like somebody had gone over a regular set of strings with some lip balm or something. There was just a sort of greasy, plasticky feel to them, which I didn't care for at all. So that sort of put me off coated strings for a while. But then I got the Yamaha Revstar a couple of years ago, the Yamaha, the RSE one, the cheap one, and that came with Elixir strings on it, and that felt amazing. That felt like really kind of slick and slippery, so this is what coated strings are supposed to sound like, is it? I might just be a convert. And then when James suggested putting the D'Addario coated strings on that Jet guitar, right, okay, do it. Now, here's the thing. I'm talking about conclusions that I've settled on, and I have come to a conclusion about coated strings. The idea of the coating is that the strings feel fresh and new, and they don't corrode, and therefore their lifespan is a lot longer, which means that they're worth the extra expense that you have to pay for them. But here's the thing. I know this guitar has been expertly set up, because, you know, you can check the intonation with a strobe tuner. It's absolutely spot on. It's perfect in every way, really. I'm really kind of falling for this guitar big time. But with those D'Addario coated strings on it, I'm thinking, well, yeah, they've been on a couple of weeks now, you know, which is a long time for me usually, because I play all day, every day, and I can really kind of chew through strings like nobody's business. But, you know, they still felt slick and like a new set of strings. But you get past the 5th fret and start playing a bar chord, or, you know, a lick or something, playing like, you know, anything up this end of the neck. And the intonation was shockingly bad. You know, and then you think, actually, the strings have been on. Forget the fact that these are coated strings. They have been on longer than I would normally leave a normal set of strings on. So I think the coating on coated strings is great for maintaining the feel of the strings. But, I mean, I'm just flying a kite here. I don't know if this is the case, but I would say that, is it possible that one thing that kind of causes the intonation to go out is that the strings maybe stretch unevenly along the length? Unless you bend every string an equal number of times at every fret, then there's going to be places where the strings are being bent and stretched a little bit more along the neck than other places. And that could be one of the reasons why the intonation, you know, kind of degrades on any set of strings. But that seemed to degrade at the same rate on the coated strings as it did on the non-coated strings. So whilst those D'Addario coated strings felt absolutely slick and slippery and fresh and new and zingy and nice, and still had great tone because they weren't kind of corroding, the intonation still suffered as if they were just a regular set of strings. So I was having to change them just as often as I was the regular uncoated strings, which meant the kind of additional expense of buying, those spending more money on coated strings was a bit of a waste, really. So now, as I say, you can go from D'Addario, Rotor Sound, Legacy, Ernie Ball strings and not notice any difference in terms of the guitar setup, intonation or anything like that. So this is the pack that I'm currently working my way through, a set of Ernie Ball Super Slinky 9-42s, and I've just ordered a bulk order there from Strings Direct of Legacy 9-42 strings, and I know that I can use those on all the guitars that I've got in here, and I can go from one brand to another, and it's not going to affect the tone of the guitar, the feel of the guitar, the intonation, nothing like that. Just as long as you don't go near your Fender strings, because in my experience, that usually would be. So that's sort of where I've settled at. To summarise, you can go between different brands of strings of the same gauge. As long as you don't include Fender, you will be, pretty much okay in terms of not having to set your guitar up every time you change strings. Coated strings feel fantastic, but the intonation degrades at the same rate as non-coated strings, in my experience, which means that you've got to change them just as often, even when they're not feeling, when they're still sounding in terms of tone, fantastic, and they're not corroded or anything. You still got to get rid of them because, go past the 8th fret and they're starting to sound out of tune. And that's sort of where I'm at. I don't think that I've suffered any degradation in the guitar sounds that I'm getting by going from 10s back down to 9s. As I say, let me know in the comments if you think that I have, but I can't hear it. So any brand of strings, as long as they're not Fender, 9-42, and it's not worth the extra cash for coated strings. Those are the conclusions that my experience and my journey has brought me to. Let me know what you think down in the comments. If you have different experience and different conclusions, then post a comment down below. But that is the video for today, folks. Hope you've found my ramblings both coherent and entertaining in some small way, and if that's the case, please hit the subscribe button and the notification bell if you haven't already done so, and why not drop me a like as well while you're at it. Don't forget the live stream every Friday 5 p.m. UK time. There's beer and chat, basically, or anything and everything is covered, guitars, music, and I suspect this week there'll be some talk about strings as well. It's a great way to kick off the weekend, and I'd love to see you there if you can make it. But for now, I'll bid you all a good day and say thank you so much for watching. Thank you for your time. Look after yourselves, folks. Stay well, stay safe, and above all, stay sane. Bye for now.